So here I'm going to show you a ProArt build, and it's going to be in a PA602 case, which is their large case. I'm using a Z790 Creator Wi-Fi board, and on it we're going to have an Intel i9 4th gen processor, Trident DDR5 32 gig sticks of RAM, 64 total, WD SN770 2 terabyte NVMe drive. For cooling, we've got the ProArt LC420 AIO cooler. And for graphics, we got the NVIDIA ProArt GeForce RTX 4080 Super. And to power everything, a TUF Gaming 1000 watt power supply. This is going to be a long video, and I'm going to go into a lot of detail, including unpacking, assembly, etc. So make sure you use the chapters below. So I got these CableMod cables, hoping that they would be a little bit easier to maneuver in the case. They wouldn't be too stiff versus the ones that come with the TUF Gaming power supply. And they were pretty good. I liked the fact that they came with the little cable combs, so that as you shape the cables, you could put the combs on, keep everything looking nice, neat, and tidy. But I kind of found out that they weren't really worth it for this build. Maybe if you wanted to get yourself a particular color because you were trying to achieve a color scheme, you might want to get some additional cables. But what I actually ended up doing was just after I think it was like the 4th build that I did, I ended up just sticking with the regular cables that came with the power supply, and then just use some zip ties to keep everything neat. But this is more for aesthetics, so completely up to you. So this is the Western Digital NVMe SSD, and this is a 2 terabyte hard drive. Now this model actually has been replaced since I put these together. It's still supported, so everything's fine as far as the build goes, but they have been replaced with the SN7100, which is still a 2 terabyte, and it has read speeds of 7,250 megabits per second and has write speeds of 6,900 megabits per second. So a little bit faster than the ones that we've got here. So these are the Intel i9 14th gen unlocked processors. They're 14900K processors, and they are on the sockets for the LGA 1700. It's the CPU socket. Make sure you check your board because there's a new socket out. It is the LGA 1851. So just keep that in mind when you're speccing this out, which socket your CPU takes. So anyway, for this current one, it is the 1700. And let's hope in the new processors they improve the boxes. I really don't like these boxes. So here we've got a couple of things. We've got the RAM as well as the power supply. For the RAM, I went with the G.Skill Trident Z5 RGB series DDR5 RAM. It's the only part of this build that actually has any kind of RGB in it. But anyway, these are 32 gig sticks, so we're going to get 64 gigs of RAM out of it. And to go along with it, here we've got the 1000 watt power supply. So I went 1000 watt power supply because I've got the LC420 cooler. We've got the i9 processor, and I wanted to make sure that we were going to have plenty of power, especially with the 4080 Super OC graphics card. There's a lot built into this, and so I wanted to make sure we were going to have plenty of power to run everything and have some headroom at the same time. So this is the ProArt LC420 AIO CPU liquid cooler, or all-in-one CPU liquid cooler. It's got a little illuminated monitor on the front of it, no RGB or anything like that, which is nice. It keeps it nice and simple and clean. It's got 3 Noctua fans in it that are super quiet. It's really nice. So this is the 140 millimeter radiator fans. There's 3 of them there, and yeah, it's an easy to install unit and nice and quiet, and again looks professional. So yeah, really like it. So here we have the ProArt Z790 Creator Wi-Fi motherboard. This has the LGA 1700 socket, so make sure when you're purchasing your processor you get the one with the right socket. This one can handle the 14th, 13th, and 12th gen processors. It's a PCIe 5.0, DDR5. It's got 2 Thunderbolt ports. It's got a 10 gig and a 2.5 gig LAN port. It has 4 M2 NVMe SSD sockets. And on the front panel, you're going to find 3.2, Gen 2, and Type-C USB ports. So this is the ASUS ProArt GeForce RTX 4080 Super OC Edition graphics card. It's a PCIe 4.0. It has 16 gigs of RAM. It has 1 HDMI port. It's a 2.1, and it has 3 display ports that are 1.4. This card I've installed a couple of ways in the ProArt cases. You can install them horizontally or you can install them vertically. I've done both. Personally, the horizontal is easiest and the vertical looks the best. So finally, we've got the ASUS ProArt case. This is the PA602. This is a full case. It's large, it's heavy, it's beautiful, it's easy to work with. It keeps everything really cool with the huge fans they have on the front there. And I did my best to preserve the box of this case because after I assemble the PC, it ends up going back into this case to be shipped out. Something I learned was to take the graphics card out because the first one that I shipped out, the graphics card got completely dislodged from the unit. Thankfully, I had it in the vertical position, so it was connected to the motherboard with a cable versus being clamped into the motherboard when it's in the standard horizontal configuration. So anyway, love the case, but it is big and heavy. And in fact, the Amazon delivery person rolled the case end over end up my walkway to get it to my front door, which I was not happy about. Anyway, it's a good case, and yeah, if you get it, you'll be excited to use it. Okay, so here I have the ASUS ProArt Z790 Creator Wi-Fi motherboard. Let's open her up. Got our SATAs. We have a ruler, display port.
So if you wanted to bring it back into the board, these are for the SSDs. A couple of pads for the SSDs, more pads for the SSDs. This is going to be for like LED reset, stuff like that to go to your case. Screw plug. It goes right here, actually. All right, here's our i9 4th gen, 14900K, 36 megabyte cache, LGA 1700. Intel, top. There she is. This is the ASUS GeForce RTX 4080 Supra. It's the ProArt version. 16 gig memory. It's the OC edition. Nice display. All right, so this is talking about the graphics card holder. I'm going to be using a ProArt case, which actually has an integrated one. Velcro strap for cables. All right, this is the little support piece they were showing a minute ago. We've got 3 display ports, HDMI. It's nice, I like this. Almost looks like a carbon fiber. Got an ASUS TUF Gaming power supply. This is the 1000 watt. Got a couple Velcro strips, set of screws, and some zip ties. Alright, so here's our ASUS ProArt LC420 CPU liquid cooler. It's an AIO, it's an all-in-one unit. So we've got a 2 terabyte SSD. This is a Western Digital WD Black. This is the SN770. This is our DDR5 G-Skill memory. It's the Trident Z5 RGB. This is in the black. It's two 32 gig chips. So we're going to get started with our ASUS ProArt, the Z790 Creator, and start building this out. So this board is for the Intel chips. So we're going to be dropping in the Intel i9 processor. I don't quite understand the packaging for these. It's got the magnetic box, but it's in the back and it's really awkward. And then when you do open it up, it kind of all falls apart. And careful not to drop things over your work. And then we end up with this. And here we're gonna give this a turn to unlock it. Pull out our processor. All right, so let's get our processor installed here. We've got to remove this tab. This is protecting all of our pins. And then we're going to push down on this little arm, slide it over a little bit, let it come up. And then there's sort of a little handle up here in the corner. You can grab that and let this swing up. Then we're going to take our processor, pull it out of the plastic here. And something you'll notice, so that you know you're doing this right, there's this little triangle in the corner here. That's going to match up with a little triangle right there in the corner. So the processor is going to end up sitting like this. So we'll take our processor, Drop it in there. You can feel it seated nicely. Close this over. And then we're going to bring our arm. There's going to be a lot of tension. We're going to bring our arm down. And we're going to hook it right there. Okay, next is going to be our WD drive. This is a 2 terabyte. It's the SN770. And we're going to install that. It's going to go up here under this plate. And if I recall, for this we're going to use a couple of the pads, or maybe just one of the pads, to make sure that it sits properly. I'll show you that. All right, so we're going to take off this cover. Got 2 screws. What's nice is they don't come all the way out, so they'll stay with the panel. So we'll end up peeling this off, and this will also act as a thermal heat sink. So this is our WD drive. Now, depending upon the size of the drive will depend on whether you're going to use this latch here, or you're going to use this latch here. If your drive is long enough where you need this latch, be sure you remove this. It just gets screwed down. So when you come in about a 30-degree angle. Make sure it fits all the way in and you don't see any of the metal there. And then you can put down, make sure that clip is out of the way, and then push the clip in. And you can see now that this has locked it into position. It's a little, you can see how there's flex and play there. So what I'm going to do, go ahead and unlock it. Pull it out. I'm going to put a piece of adhesive here, and that's going to keep it up and give it some more room. Sometimes you'll have these where they'll have chips on the bottom side, and that will increase the height. Since this doesn't have chips on the bottom side, we're going to go ahead and put that adhesive spacer in there. Okay, so little package, it's got our little pads in there, and that tells you it's for use for single-sided M.2, and we're going to stick it onto this pad right here. We'll take our drive, again, come in at about 30 degree. You'll feel what's right. Okay, it's in there. And then lock it into position. Then we're going to take our heatsink, and it's got the thermal pad on it. And so we're going to peel this off. Just make it snug. You don't have to torque it down. You'll kind of feel when the screws stop. All right. The other thing I wanted to do while we're here, since we're going to be putting a cooler on this, it's going to be an AIO. I want to get this little rubber thing off of here, because that's going to probably get in the way of the cooler. So before we move on, I want to install the mounting hardware for our CPU cooler. And we're going to use the ASUS ProArt 420 liquid cooler for this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the hardware out of here so that we can get that installed before we start putting the RAM on. It'll just make it easier to get our hands in there. Alright, so this is the hardware bag out of the CPU cooler. And you can see right here, Intel 1700 standoff. So that's what we're going for. So these are going to end up being mounted around the 4 holes on the board. And you can see on this board the way that they have these. There's actually 2 holes. There's an inner and an outer, and they're kind of joined in what looks like an 8 fashion. And the inner is for the 1200 series processors, and the outer is for the 1700. And we've got the 1700 series i9, and so that's how we're going to end up mounting the screws. So here are the different back plates. And this one here, Intel, so this is what we'll end up using. And you can see these kind of slide in and out, so that's what's going to configure for the backplate to be in the 1700 or the 1200 series. So in would be the 12, and then in the out position would be the 17. And so we're going to be doing 17. So on the back of the board here, we're going to take this and we're going to place it so that it drops into the holes. Before I let that go, let's see if I could do this with one hand. Have your mounting hardware out of the bags and ready to go. There we go. All right, once we get a couple of these in here, it'll stay put. I'll just do some opposite corners here. Okay, so something that I don't really like is these little standoffs. They're screwed all the way down, but you can see it's loose. It's tightened to the bracket behind, but it doesn't make a snug fit on the board. I think that's intentional, and because as I pull out, which will end up happening once the cooler's put on, it feels kind of snug and squared. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so next what we're going to do is install our memory. And so we've got the Trident Z5 RGB memory here. So when we put our memory in, since we've got 2 chips, we're going to go into slots 2 and 4.
So just be aware that these slots, they're actually labeled A1, A2, B1, and B2. And so slots 2 and 4 are going to be A2 and B2.
This is, give you an explanation here. So the way these work is you can pull these away, and they're just going to come out at a little angle, like so. The ones on the inside of the board are fixed. So those you're not going to try and pull away. Turn it this way, might be a little easier to see. We'll go like this. All right, and when we put our memory in, remember when you're working with all of these products, you don't want to be touching any of the metal contacts if you don't absolutely have to. You don't want any static electricity going into these. So you're going to see there's a little notch there, and that notch is going to line up right here. So if you try to get it in one way and you can see that the notch isn't right, just take the memory, flip it around, and put it in the other way. So I'll do this one that's closer, and so this way you can see it's going to line up. Turn it this way, you can see it's just a little off. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to line it directly over, and then we're going to start. Sorry, I don't like the way this sits now with the cooler on the back. I'm going to get something to support this before I move on. Alright, so I've actually got this little ASUS manual packet. Because the board is not sitting flat, because we installed our cooler, which in hindsight I probably shouldn't have done before the memory, I'm going to go ahead and slide this under, and that's going to give us a more stable base. This pad is not very forgiving, and I don't want to crack the board. So with this underneath, we've opened the one side. This side is static, so it's not going to do anything. And then what we're going to do, you can take this back out again, line up our notches, and then we're going to come down, straight down, and we're going to push until we hear the clicks. So this side clicked in, and this side, this little thing popped up. And I just pushed it in one more to make sure it was secure. And that feels pretty good. Let me slide this down a little bit. All right, then we're going to do our second chip. So again, we're going to want to make sure that the holes line up. If not, you turn it around. That's going to be what we want. And remember, for this one, we're going to go into the second slot here. Probably should have done that one first for you, but so I'm going to go in on both sides, and we're going to go straight down. There we go. There we go. Now it really locked. All right, so we've got our processor installed. We've got our SSD drive under here. We've got our memory installed. I'm going to get this mounted in the case. I think that's going to be our next thing to do. Also going to put together the cooler, and then we'll end up sticking our graphics card on. Graphics card's going to go here, and just to kind of show you, this is a little release button, which is a welcome addition, because if you've ever tried to get a graphics card out and try and reach one of these little latches manually, it's virtually impossible to get back in there and feel like you're not ripping the whole board apart. So neat little addition. I like it. So let's go ahead, and while we're here, let's pull off some of these little stickers. That way we don't forget. Okay, so before we move on to getting the fans installed on the water cooler, we're going to need a mounting bracket from our ProArt case here. So sorry, this is going to be a little shaky. But let's go ahead and look at what we need to do here. So this is the ProArt 602 case, and it's a good sized case. Seems really sturdy, really nice, lots of room, some really huge fans in the front. We got some controls and some inputs up here. We can put our fans on at max if we want. We can click them back to auto, and we've got some USBs up here. We also have a lock for the power button, which is great considering that it's on the top of the case. All right, so let's go ahead and pop this open. And on the back is a button right here, and it's going to release the glass, and then that'll just slide right out. I'll take a look here on the inside, so you can see that fell. This is the support for our graphics card. But we've got a couple of fans here, and then we've got a fan here in the rear, and then up in here is where we're going to put our radiator with our 3 cooling fans. And so to get to this up here in the back, there's just a little tab, and we're going to lift that slightly and pull, and this will come off this screen. And then this is the bracket that we're going to end up mounting the radiator on the top and the fans down below. And I stared at this for a while, and the instruction said to, you know, take out 2 screws over there, and I'm like, there's no screws. And there's this piece, and it kind of looks like it's solid in there, but if you kind of give it a good tug, it will come out. And then in there, you can see we've got a couple of screws in order to get this bracket out. All right, so I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back to the case. Okay, so here we are with the bracket out of the top of our case. Like I said before, radiator is going to mount to the top, and the fans are going to mount in through the bottom. We've got some little tabs here for our cables to run from the fans back down into the case so that we can supply it with some power. So one of the things you want to pay attention to is this arrow. It's going to show you the direction of airflow, and this one's going to show you the direction that the fan's going to spin. So you want to make sure that when these are mounted and it sits inside the case, you want it to be drawing air out of the case and up. And then this is going to mount like this. It's symmetrical, so it's not going to matter which way you mount the fans, but having this along the back side, you can see it doesn't matter which way we turn it, it's the same, as well as the mounting brackets here. So we're going to do something like this, and then we're going to take the cables and we're going to route the cables down along here. All right, so I grabbed our radiator screws out of the parts bag as well as our fan screws. And it looks like the way this is going to have to happen is we're going to have to mount the radiator onto here, and it's going to go on this top, and then the fans, the screws for the fans will then screw up through and into the radiator. I think that's how it's got to go. So let's give this a shot here. So we got our radiator. And I actually brought a rubber band because what I'm going to do, use the rubber band to keep this protective plastic here on so that it doesn't fall off and we end up damaging the plate. So I'll just make sure this doesn't come off. All right. So this will end up going like this. This is going to come here. And we'll end up mounting the radiator like this. And actually, Actually, we don't need the radiator screws. Yeah, I do not see a purpose for them right now, because what we'll do is we'll put our 3 fans in, and our fans are basically going to sandwich this bracket between the fans and the radiator. All right, so, and if we flip up that way, that means we want our cables on this side. So let's do this. And I really wish that there were exit holes on the side here. If we go through this here, we end up being squished between the case and the bracket, so that's not going to work. These holes, the cable's just going to have to come out like this. Okay, so let's do that one there. We're going to do this one here, something like that, and this one's going to go over here, something like that. I really don't know how. That's gonna work. I may not use these for the cables. These are way too thick for that. I don't think that's gonna work. Let's even see if one of the cables would even fit in there. Yeah, it'll squish in there. All right, we'll see. Okay, so again, we want to be conscious of our airflow direction. So this actually needs to go like this, because we want the arrow facing towards the radiator. Remember, this whole thing is going to flip over and the air is going to be pushed up out through the top. So we're going to do a little something like this. Want the arrow going this way. Same thing here. Whoops. Arrow down. Okay. Try to be kind to these cables. Okay, we'll do, yeah, there's just not enough room. I'm not even going to bother trying to get these to fall in to place. And we're probably going to come out, there's two, let's see if I can lean this down for you. Can't really see from this angle. I'm not going to move the camera right now, but there's two cable holes over about here and here. So I think I'm just gonna feed these through there. All right, let's see if we can line these up. Let me do this one at a time, and I won't tighten it down so that we can make sure that we get everything to fit. All right, so let's do that. And so a little trick if you don't know it, but if you're not sure if you're going to be putting a screw in straight or if you're going to strip the threads, turn the screw backwards until you hear a click, and then you know the threads have lined up. So I'll do that again. There it goes, that little click. Now I know the threads lined up, so I'll go ahead and do a couple turns, and then I'm just going to repeat that process.
I'm actually going to end up taking it apart again, not completely, but just enough so that I could tuck the cables in along the bottom between the bracket and the fans to make it neater. So if you're assembling yours right now, take note, see what I do here in a second.
I'm actually going to redo this. What I should have done was ran it just there's a slight channel in there for the on the side of the fans and also this bracket, and what I should have done is just ran these two down and let them come out here at this corner, because that's going to get me closest to the hole in the case and allow this to look much neater. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to reposition the camera and we will get this installed into the case.
So I'm loosening this up again because the bracket needs to be flush with the radiator in the front of the PC case. And this allows the little tray that stores the Wi-Fi antenna to fit in the back. Otherwise, everything gets pushed towards the back and doesn't fit. So if you take that bracket and you line it up nice and flush with the radiator, then there'll be plenty of room for the bracket to fit in the back. And you'll see the little tray that I fit in here in just a moment.
Yep, it'll fit.
Alright, so now that we know that's going to fit, we've got two screws that are used to hold the bracket for the radiator in place in the back there. Get those in, and then you can drop that little tray inside, and as you can see, I had plenty of room left over.
Alright, so before we get the motherboard, power supply, and everything else in here, I'm gonna take out these shrouds here. The power supply is gonna end up under here, and this is just blocking cables coming into, or the view through the back where the cables come in to go to the motherboard. So there's a screw up top here. And this is on a sliding track, so I may or may not take this out completely. Let me just loosen this up. No, I think I'm going to take it out. This is also good because it reveals where you can install drives from the other side of the case. This case has got a lot of room in it and some really good mounting points for SATA or SSD drives. screw in the other side. This will give you a good view of this side. Here's some drive bays in here. Power supply is going to go back here. Mounting here and here. SSD drive mounting here. Some nice cable management. It's pretty good. So I think that's the screw we need. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, getting there.
So I ran the 3 fan cables through the hole to the back and laid the case on its back to make it easier to put the board in, and then just tucked the pump over to the side there.
When you drop the motherboard into place, it's already set up for this board as far as the mounting locations go. But when you set it down, the center screw hole has a little bit of a rim around it. So you just want to make sure that that gets seated in there properly. And you can kind of feel it'll lock it into place there. And then out of the bag, we're going to look for this one that says for motherboard. Here's this little interesting oddball piece. And that's just going to plug this hole right here. Okay, got it this time. So basically what I did is I took the back plate off behind where the processor is, and you can see now I can get to that bracket back there to hold these up. It's just a little bit of play that they have in there, because these are tightened down all the way. And I need that play in order to get the nuts to bite. All right, so we're gonna come in one more time. Last time. And we're gonna bring this straight down. Nice and easy. Like so. All right. Get this one on.
So what I did here was I propped the computer up at an angle so I could get my hand underneath the back, and then also remove the little panel that's back behind the processor there. And this is all because of that bracket that holds the pump to the motherboard has some play in it, and it's just enough where I couldn't get the screws to the nuts to bite the screws, and I had to push the plate from behind and then put the screw in on the top. I don't know why the screws couldn't be made a little bit longer to make this an easier process, or that plate couldn't be a little more snug to the back of the motherboard, but that's kind of what I was dealing with here. In a couple of the other builds, I actually put the pump on while the motherboard was out of the case and then just dropped the motherboard and the fans into the case together. So there's a multitude of ways you can do it.
Okay. Got it going. I'm not sure why it was so difficult. I think there needs to be a better design here, because that was just kind of ridiculous. So again, we're gonna make this snug, but not too tight. That thermal paste in there is gonna make a nice bond. There we go. There we go. Okay. She's in. Okay, so what I did next was run the two cables that are coming out of the pump. One's USB for control, and the other is the pump power. And I ran them on the inside of that mount, right up along here. The one wasn't going to fit in there, so I did run the pump power around this screw, comes up and around. They both go up towards the top there. Move the light. And the one plugs right into the top of the board where it says pump. And then the other one I've got going over through that hole there, so that we can connect it to USB to control it. Okay, so I jumped ahead a little bit on the cabling. So let's do a quick review. So down here in the corner, we've got the HD audio connector. Here we've got the fan connector. Next we've got USB, another USB. This one came from the USB controller for our cooler. As we go along, this one here is the front panel. And then moving up to the top, first one there is the I/O pump. Then that last one there on the right is the CPU fan. And that's actually all three fans that come off of that one cable. You'll see in the back the 3-for connection, and I'll show you that. Okay, so here we are in the back. Obviously this is before cleanup, but this is the threefer that's connecting all three of the top fans. 1, 2, 3. This came with the cooler. This is the USB that's coming over the top, and that's from the cooler, and that's going to run down, go through here, and connect. So that takes care of what all of those are at the top. Then the rest of these down here through the bottom, this is a fan, and this is going to be all the case fans, and that went through and connected right there. This is the USB. This one was going again to the front. And then over here, we've got 2 more USBs. This one here is the one that's going to control the cooler. And then this one is going off and to the front of the case. These two are routing around the front. Again, these are part of the case, and this one is running around the front too, and that's part of the case. And I'll flip around and show you those. Okay, back here to the board again. These are the 2 cables coming from the back, one here and one here. So these are both USB 3.2 Gen. The only difference is the one at the top is going to be the USB-C for the front panel. Okay, next, let's get our graphics card in. All right, got our card, got our power cables. This is our little support piece, which we probably won't need because we've got one built into the case. And here's some Velcro strap. All right, set this aside. We are actually gonna end up going in like this. We're gonna connect to the motherboard this way. Let me move some stuff around and show you. Actually, before we do that, we've got a lot of stuff to peel off of here. So on this case, they've got this little door here, and basically it's gonna connect these 3 slots. So what we need to do is unscrew this, pull this open, and what that does is detach these 3 pins here that are going to go to these 3 slots. And we only need these top 2. We're gonna put our graphics card right here at the top, and so actually not the first one. We're gonna take out the second and third, and then put our card in. Okay, so we've got this little door open, and I'm gonna pop out the second and the third. Then we're going to take a graphics card and make sure you remove this little protective cover. And then you're going to want to line it up so that it meets the motherboard right there. And it looks like you got to kind of angle it in a little bit so that thing's clear. Actually, I'm gonna take, these are getting in the way. Take these off. So I took those first two off. There we go. Okay. All right, and that's seated in there. And then we'll close this little door. Okay. We'll screw the door closed. And this is designed to fold out and it's got a little pad, and then we can bring it up and tighten it, and it's going to support the graphics card. Okay, so I think I've sorted through all the cables that I'm going to need. So this one here, this is going to go to our motherboard in the top right corner, and then come down here on the power supply. The graphics card has this wonderful piece on it. This is the PCI 5 16 connector here, and then it branches out into these three, which means that I'm going to end up using these guys. This will give me one, or this will give me 1 and 2, and then 3. But you can see this is the same connector here. So what I've actually done is I've ordered a cable to replace this one, and it's going to have a right angle on it, so it's going to be able to go straight up and over into the back and come around and plug right into here on our power supply. So that'll make it a lot nicer. But I'm going to go ahead and wire it up in the meantime without that, and then I'll just swap that out when that arrives. This final cable here, this is going to connect to our front panel. So it's got the SATA connector, and that'll run up to the front panel. And that should be all I should need from the power supply. All right, so start getting this installed. Okay, so first, let's go ahead and get all of our cables connected, and then we'll get this guy in here and screwed into place. I'm going to send all the cables out the back so that they can be routed to where they need to go. This one here, this is going to be for the motherboard. So the full solid connection is going to go to the motherboard. And then down here, we're going to go to MB, motherboard. This one's going to fit here. And this one is going to fit right next to it. So keep it neat. So this is our 16 connector. This is one of the cables we'll end up replacing. This will be 16 through to 16 instead of this configuration. So we're going to go right here, and this is the only 16 on this power supply. Okay, good there. And then this one is going to be for the final of the 3 connectors for our graphics card. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to go right next to it here. This is what's going to run to the cable coming from our front panel, right there, for the peripheral SATA. So this is going to be up. Pull that all the way through. And then we'll turn it this way. The cool thing about this case too, before I screw this down, you can see there's ventilation here, but there's a screen that runs from the back all the way to the front of the case. And so when you pull the front off the case for the filter that's over there, you can also slide this and it'll slide all the way out the front. You can clean that off. It's really easy to get to, and it's great to keep as much dust and stuff out of your case as possible. Just get that started. Again, you'll see me back out the screws and listen for or feel for that catch of the threads, and then put them in. It's just not fun when you strip one of these. Alright, so here we are in the back, and here's all our cables coming in from our power supply. Here's all the cables that were here before, all of our data and everything. And I'm going to try and kind of make sense of all this and make it a little neater. A lot of times what you can do is, depending upon where the cable comes from, the fewer cables that you end up crossing, the better. So I'm kind of just looking at this flat one here. Comes out, goes over the top of these cables, comes down below, in between these, and then in, and I'm thinking I want to give that a better route. Let's see if I can reach it from here. I think I got it. So I'm just going to pull it out of the board in the front there. There we go. All right, that was the front panel one. All right, so I'm just going to go back up here. And I'm going to feed it underneath all of these. And then go back through again. All right, and I'll connect that up later. All right, so a lot of these data, I think I'm gonna hold these out and see about running the power in the back up through here first, and then figure out how to best deal with the data one. So why don't we start with our largest one? It's almost like braiding hair here. Start with our largest one. This is going to go to the motherboard. And for that, we're going to end up right up about here. So let's see if we can reach and feel where the side the clip is on. Okay, it looks like the clip is on the outside. So if we came up this way, and I'm actually gonna put this in place just to kind of guide it as we go here. There we go. All right, and then this might have just enough to make it out there. I'm actually going to flip this back around and see how that's going to connect, because it looks like it might be just enough. Okay, here we are to the back again. I took the motherboard power, I took it out of this top loop and brought it from the second one over, just because going up there and bringing it around, it was just pinching it too tight. Didn't feel good. All right. So let's grab the rest of our cables here, and let's pick on something. Let's see if this is going to reach. Oh yeah, this will reach that really easy. All right, so let's bring that up here. Follow the same way. Looks like that can even, so that's just coming out of the top right up here. So I'm just going to run this let's go behind all of this stuff, and we'll bring it right down on the other side of that. Meet up with this, and we can even, let's see, there we go. And then we can even just bend this back down again. All right, let's take this off. Actually, you know what might be neater is to just go ahead and run this all the way up. Bring this all the way up and connect it up here. There we go. I think that'll be better. These will shove in there. Yeah. Okay. Then these are going to go, well, these are going to go into here, and this is coming out kind of the front. So I think what I'm going to do is send these, let's see, I want to go, this clips in, can come back around the top like that. All right, and our graphics card's right here on the other side. So I'm gonna take these and I'm gonna go into this second slot up here and out to the front. Now this is what I'm gonna eventually replace, because I just think this is not a good run of cables here to deal with. And it'll turn into a single cable with this connector on both ends and go right into the power supply. So I'm not going to get too finicky with this, but let's just make it neat enough. For right now. And most everything else I'm going to end up zip tying. But what I also want to do is get things connected and then make sure it powers up without any problems. All right, I'll do that. Do that. Okay, that's connected. That. These are good. These are the fans for the cooler. Okay, I think around the front we're going to connect up our graphics card, and then I think we're going to be able to power it up. Cool. Okay, here we are again. All right, so let's get this hooked up to here. So the way these work, sometimes they slide into little latches, but basically these just have little tabs so that this clip helps keep it in. So I'm going to go ahead and get that little single one in first, and then bring this one in, and it's going to hold it in place. You know what? I think I might come down the bottom. Yeah, I think I'm going to come down the bottom. And then we'll see what we can do to make that pretty for now. All right. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this cable. I've got it 90-degreeing up, but it'll be a single cable, and I can either go over here and underneath if it's got enough flex, or it'll just go single cable up that way, and I think that'll look fine, because this just looks horrible. All right, so I think we're at our moment of truth. All right, power supply's got power, and we'll hit our power button at the top, and nothing happened. Oh. All right, power supply's got a power switch on it. There we go. We got lights. We got power. All right, now we'll hit our power button on the case. Oh yeah. Nice. Okay, I think I left off one crucial cable. It is the CPU cable. And that's going to go in the top left corner here. It is an 8-pin. So let's go ahead and get that in place. I'm going to come around from the back. All right, the clip is on the top. This is all full. This is our SATA here's our CPU over here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll get that far one. Okay, there we go. All right, let's take another crack at this. Power supply on. Power button. Ah, that's what we wanted to see. Let's just hope it keeps going. It's gonna check memory. And then we need it to advance to green. Come on, baby. I think it advances to green. Oh! Okay, yep, something's not working. It's gonna do the same thing, isn't it? It's gonna go to white and reboot. It's not passing the test. Yep. All right. Not good. Whoa. Oh, yeah, there we go. We got green. But we still got white. What I probably should do is hook up a monitor. Okay, keyboard, mouse, and monitor hooked up, and things are looking a lot better. I don't know why I didn't do that in the first place, but anyway. Yep, looking good over here. We've got message, new CPU installed. Please enter setup to configure your system. Press F1 to continue and take advantage of the ASUS optimized performance. If you wish to follow the Intel guidelines and apply its stock power limits, please disable the ASUS multi-core enhancement. No. In the BIOS settings. Next, you will enter the UEFI settings menu. Press F1 to run setup. So let's do that. F1. Nice. This is what I want to see. Okay, so I received the cable that I want to use to replace this with. So if you remember, this comes down, splits into 3, runs all the way down to the back, and comes in down here into the power supply. Got this guy here, and look at that. That is going to be fantastic. So I got it with the right angle. There's 2 kinds of right angles, so make sure you get the right one. But this will end up going in there like that, the right angle, and then I'm going to run this over, back, and through, and down to the power supply. So it'll be a nice run, much cleaner, less cables to deal with, can get rid of this mess hanging out here. Really disappointed this is what they do, but this is a little stiffer, but I think I'll be able to form it just right. Maybe I'm gonna mess with the comb here, the cable comb, try to make it look prettier, but I think it's gonna think it's gonna do okay. I think once I shape it up, I think it's gonna look nice. Okay, so this is a quick look at the ASUS ProArt. Top, we've got our fan control. Typically, you could just leave it on auto if you really wanted to. You could set the front fans to maximum. We've got microphone to USB 2.0s, Type-C USB, and two USB 3s. Then we've got a reset button, we've got our power button, and then this here is a lock button. And so what that does is that basically renders this button inoperable so that you can't accidentally shut down the machine, seeing as how the power button is easily accessible from the top. So on the front, we've got two large cooling fans. They are behind a protective screen filter. There is a filter reset button here, and there's a light that will come on if the filter gets clogged. The way that you open this front section here is there's a button on both sides underneath this handle section, and when you push those both forward, I can do this with one hand, then the vent will come forward and you simply kind of lean and lift out. That exposes the two fans, and then we have the screen here on the inside, and it does slide up and out. All right, while we're here, in addition to that, because air gets drawn from underneath as well, especially back by the power supply in the back of the computer, right here is another screen or filter, and this runs the entire length of the case. So you can pull this all the way out, clean this off. A lot of times, you know, you can use a air spray, compressed air of some kind to clean these off. Put that in, put the front back on, and it just latches down there at the bottom. And then clicks into place. On the back section here, this panel, this will come open in the back. There's a button, and this leans forward and exposes the back. You can see everything's been nicely routed and tucked away, and this just catches at the bottom. Again, if I could do it with one hand. There we go, and then push. Okay, And then over on this side, we've got tempered glass. There's a cover here I've left on that you can pull off. And down the bottom here, another vent to pull air through. Again, this has a filter on the back. To open this one, again, push button in the top corner and then lift up and out. There's our interior. And then there's this filter here, and there's a arrow shows you pushing in that direction, and basically you can push the whole thing, and then this comes off for cleaning, and then put it in and slide it back into place. The power supply is down under here. It does have its own fan. That's why you might find that bottom filter, you know, may occasionally need to be cleaned because it's going to be sucking air down through the bottom. The way most of this works, air gets blown in from the front and then, you know, is filtered and then exits through the back, either through the mesh or through the rear fan that sucks from the back. And then up on the top there, not easy to see, is 3 fans, and those go through the water cooler radiator at the top, which I'll show you next. Okay, so up here on the top, this is a vent. In the back here, there's just a little latch. You squeeze and pull back, and that releases the vent. This is have a screen as well, and then up top here you can see is the cooler radiator, and the fans are down below that. In the very back here, there's a little section. This is the antenna for the Wi-Fi. It can be kept tucked in here if it's not really being used, which you guys should be plugging in Ethernet anyway, so you don't need to use it. But if you did need to use it, it'll come out. There's a little catch here where the wire goes through and then down to the antenna. It's got a magnetic base, and so you could take it out, stick it on the back, and use the antenna. All right, so this will just lay on top. Again, doing this with one hand. Okay, there we go. Laying on top, and then just slide it into place and it'll lock. On the back here, we've got, you know, our pretty much standard connections. We've got our Ethernet. There's actually 2 Ethernets, a 2.5 gig and a 10 gig. 2.5 gig is fine to use. We've got 1 gig networks throughout. You've got your USB connections, you got your audio connections, and then down below here, we've got our 3 DP DisplayPort connections, as well as 1 HDMI connection. And then finally at the bottom is our power supply. The power supply does have a switch. It's in the off position. So once you connect up power, you can turn your power supply switch on. Nothing will happen on the computer until you actually press the power button up here. All right, I think that's it. It does have some wheels in the back, so if you needed to move it around the office, there are some wheels on the back. I don't know how really functional they are, but they're here, so. All right, I think that's it. And yeah, you should be seeing it shortly. Thanks.